The events of Numbers 15 through 17 follow on from the unpleasant experience at Kadesh, where the children of Israel turned back from the Promised Land's doorway due to their unbelief and disobedience. They were now facing 40 years of wilderness wandering. Almost completely ignoring their disastrous invasion of Canaan, God gave a series of instructions about their future life in the Promised Land. They would have reminders of how important it was to obey the Lord and be holy in their clothing. Numbers 16 begins with a rebellion against Moses and Aaron, God's appointed leaders, rather than an account of Israelites who remembered to do God's commandments. Numbers chapter 15, verses 1 through 41, New King James Version. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you have come into the land you are about to inhabit, which I am giving to you, and you make an offering by fire to the Lord, a burnt offering or a sacrifice, to fulfill a vow, or as a freewill offering, or in your appointed feasts, to make a sweet aroma to the Lord, from the herd or the flock, then he who presents his offering to the Lord shall bring a grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/4 of a hin of oil, and 1/4 of a hin of wine as a drink offering you shall prepare with the burnt offering or the sacrifice for each lamb. Or for a ram you shall prepare as a grain offering 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/3 of a hin of oil, and as a drink offering you shall offer 1/3 of a hin of wine as a sweet aroma to the Lord. And when you prepare a young bull as a burnt offering, or as a sacrifice to fulfill a vow, or as a peace offering to the Lord, then shall be offered with the young bull a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour, mixed with 1/2 a hin of oil. And you shall bring as the drink offering 1/2 a hin of wine, as an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. Thus it shall be done for each young bull, for each ram, or for each lamb or young goat. According to the number that you prepare, so you shall do with everyone according to their number. All who are native born shall do these things in this manner, in presenting an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. And if a stranger dwells among you, or whoever is among you throughout your generations, and would present an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord, just as you do, so shall he do. One ordinance shall be for you of the assembly and for the stranger who dwells with you, an ordinance forever throughout your generations. As you are, so shall the stranger be before the Lord. One law and one custom shall be for you and for the stranger who dwells with you. Again the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come into the land of which I bring you, then it will be, when you eat of the bread of the land, that you shall offer up a heave offering to the Lord. You shall offer up a cake of the first of your ground meal as a heave offering. As a heave offering of the threshing floor, so shall you offer it up. Of the first of your ground meal you shall give to the Lord a heave offering throughout your generations. If you sin unintentionally and do not observe all these commandments which the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you by the hand of Moses from the day the Lord gave commandment and onward throughout your generations, then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed without the knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and its drink offering according to the ordinance, and one kid of the goats as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was unintentional. They shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for their unintended sin. It shall be forgiven, the whole congregation of the children of Israel and the stranger who dwells among them, because all the people did it unintentionally. And if a person sins unintentionally, then he shall bring a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the person who sins unintentionally when he sins unintentionally before the Lord, to make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. you shall have one law for him who sins unintentionally, for him who is native-born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwells among them. But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he is a native-born or a stranger, that one brings reproach on the Lord, and he shall be cut off from among his people. Because he has despised the word of the Lord, and has broken his commandment, that person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. Now while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation, because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." So as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. Again the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined, and that you may remember to do all my commandments and be holy for your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, to be your God. I am the Lord your God." Numbers chapter 16, verses 1 and 2, New King James Version. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. The rebellion against Moses and Aaron was not led by riffraff. Korah was from the tribe of Levi and the family of Kohath, and he had been entrusted with the important task of caring for the tabernacle furniture. Dathan, Abiram, and On belonged to the Reuben tribe. These 4 men were successful in persuading 250 leaders to join them. Numbers chapter 3, verses 29 through 31, New King James Version. The families of the children of Kohath were to camp on the south side of the tabernacle, and the leader of the father's house of the families of the Kohathites and the Elizaphan, the son of Uziel. Their duty included the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the utensils, and the sanctuary with which they ministered, the screen, and all the work relating to them. Numbers chapter 16, verse 3, New King James Version. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" Jealousy had clearly spread throughout the population. Korah and his companions were displeased with Moses and Aaron's leadership and confronted them. First, they challenged the divinely appointed leadership of Moses and Aaron. Although these men based their claim to leadership on God's declaration that all the people were to be holy unto the Lord, they were using one truth to ignore the truth of God's appointment. Doctrines in the Bible do not contradict one another. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 45, New King James Version. "For I am the Lord who brings you up out of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy." Bringing this situation into the New Testament would be equivalent to pitting the doctrine of the believer's priesthood against the teaching of God-appointed spiritual leaders. All believers are priests in the sense that we can communicate with God directly. We are not required to visit a human priest, but that doesn't mean we don't have divinely appointed leaders. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 17, New King James Version. "Obey those who rule over you, and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls and those who must give account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you." Numbers chapter 16, verses 16 through 19, New King James Version. "And Moses said to Korah, Tomorrow you and all your company be present before the Lord, you and they, as well as Aaron. Let each take his censer and put incense in it, and each of you bring his censer before the Lord. 250 censers, both you and Aaron, each with his censer." So every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. Moses made the wise decision to let God settle the matter. These men wanted to burn incense like the priests, but Moses reminded them that God had already assigned them duties. They had also returned to blaming Moses for leading the Israelites out of Egypt, but failing to deliver the promised land. God appeared and revealed who was in charge. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." Then they fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin and you be angry with all the congregation?" So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, Get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, "Depart now from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins." So they got away from around the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of their tents, with their wives, their sons, and their little children. And Moses said, "By this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, that you will understand that these men have rejected the Lord." Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, with their households and all the men with Korah, with all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. The earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. Then all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up also." And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away. The censers of these men who sinned against their own souls, let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar. Because they presented them before the Lord, therefore they are holy, and they shall be a sign to the children of Israel." So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which those who were burned up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar, to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider, who is not a descendant of Aaron, should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. Despite the fact that Moses and Aaron were about to be vindicated in spectacular fashion, they prayed to God for mercy on the people. The rebel leaders were judged by an earthquake, while the 250 other leaders were judged by fire. The 250 censers that survived the fire were hammered into broad plates and placed around the altar as a permanent reminder of the lessons learned that day. God made a decision and demonstrated his sovereignty. We might expect the lesson to stick with us. It wasn't the case. The murmuring resumed the next day. Numbers chapter 16, verses 48 and 49, New King James Version. "And he stood between the dead and the living, so the plague was stopped. Now those who died in the plague were 14,700, besides those who died in the Korah incident." Do you see how sin multiplies? Sin began with a small group of rebellious people against the Lord. It soon spread to the entire congregation. God ruled once more. Fortunately, Moses and Aaron were on Israel's side. Aaron, God's chosen high priest, stood between the dead and the living, and the plague was stopped, despite the fact that 14,700 people died. Numbers chapter 17, verses 1 through 7, New King James Version. "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and get from them a rod from each father's house, all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write each man's name on his rod, And you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi. For there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave him a rod apiece, for each leader according to their father's houses, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. Then you shall place them in the tabernacle of meeting before the testimony, where I meet with you. And it shall be that the rod of the man whom I choose will blossom. Thus I will rid myself of the complaints of the children of Israel which they make against you. So Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and each of their leaders gave him a rod apiece, for each leader according to their fathers' houses, 12 rods. And the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses placed the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. Then, in a beautiful way, God confirmed Aaron as his divinely appointed high priest. He told Moses to get each tribe a wooden rod and engrave the name of their tribe on it. Aaron's name was engraved on the rod of Levi. He then instructed them to place the rods in the tabernacle. Aaron's rod was the only one that sprouted both leaves and almonds. The first tree to sprout in the spring was an almond tree. It produced lovely white flower clusters as well as luscious almonds. God demonstrated that Aaron was the appointed high priest by taking something that was dead and bringing it back to life. This lesson demonstrates how damaging sin can be when we refuse to submit to God's appointed leaders. Korah was the catalyst for the rebellion. Then there were 3 more men involved: Dathan, Abiram, and On. It grew to 250 people and eventually engulfed the entire congregation. God's people faced judgment and death because they refused to accept his appointed leaders and refused to acknowledge that God was in charge and that they should submit to him.